today we will, Luisa and I will give you some tips in order to improve your business proposal, but also improve the communication in your teams. We'll put related tips first, and then Luisa will take over. Luisa will take over the next part. Okay. So in section 1, usually in most reports, it's the market analysis. Okay. And in this section, you are often asked to conduct a SWOT analysis. So I'm sure that you are all familiar with the SWOT, since it was in the the theoretical phase. You had a module explaining some business things, but here are a few things we usually see that students don't really respect when doing their SWOT. So we thought that highlighting them could help you to avoid doing those mistakes. So here you have a graph, like an image of a SWOT. And it is recommended to have at least 4 points. So 4 strengths, 4 weaknesses, etc. This is the minimum. And then we often have students who are a bit too general. So when what do I say by saying too general is that some students in the threats will say, okay, the client, the competition is a threat for the client. But if you put yourself in the shoes of your clients, it may seem evident for the client that the competition is already a threat. So try to find things that the client might not have thought about and should consider. It's also good to provide figures. So you can say, okay, I don't know, in the threat, in the country where the client is settled in, the political stability is the percentage of the political stability is very low, and then you give a percentage. So the client will see that you did research about this and you know what you're talking about. And then if you think that some of your points are not, like they require more explanation in order to be well understood, then below your SWOT, you can like give a little paragraph with explanation so the client can understand better what you meant in your SWOT analysis. And also, this is a little plus, but it could be great to consider doing your SWOT as a visual tool, you know what I mean? Like here in the picture. It's not compulsory, but this is something we highly recommend. And then, you know, when the evaluator and even a client look at the SWOT, it's always nicer and more easy to grasp what's said in your SWOT when it's presented this way. And one last thing I would like to highlight, which is often forgotten, is that SWOT, the strengths and the weaknesses, it's in turn, okay? Oh, I think, oh, okay, it's a half French SWOT. I just realized that. But the strength and the weaknesses, it's about the client itself, okay? And then here for the opportunities and the threats, it's more the external factors of the client. So something that the client doesn't have control on or can't. Like, as I said, with the political stability, the client is not responsible of this, at least I hope. Okay, so now we can move to the next part. Okay, so in the section 1, you may also be asked to conduct a competition analysis. And often what happens is that students just mention the competitor, they just give the name. But doing so is not an analysis. It's just like you give away the names and you let the client doing the research, but the client is not looking for that. So how to conduct a good competition analysis? That's the question. The first thing you could consider is, as I said, list the competitors. So that's a good thing. And then give also a little explanation about them. And I also recommend to put the logo, because sometimes it can appear that well, a name of a company refers to two companies. I've already had the case once, and it got a bit confusing, even though it's not like a common case, but it can happen. So just if you present the logo of the company, this can also help the client, or the link to the website, that's also an alternative. So yes, the description, and then once you're done with this, for the description, it doesn't have to be like a very long one explaining the whole history of the client. You just like give what they do, when it was created, who is the founder, and maybe 2 or 3 more information, but it doesn't need to be like very long. And then once you found the competitors, you have to analyze them, right? Because this is an analysis. So you have to compare your competitors with the clients. And how do you do this? Well, you can just, some people like to do a sort of strength and weaknesses. So they say, okay, this is the strength of the client I'm working with, and this are the strength of the competitor, and then they do the same for the weaknesses. However, there are some analysis you could consider, a way to present it at least. So here you have here one analysis you could adopt, which is basically you set you take a criterion. How do you say a criteria in singular? Okay,
Criteria?
you take two. I think the singular is like criterion. And anyway, I think you see what I meant. You take actually two of them. You put here, for example, here it's the price. You have the higher price and the lower price. And then the second criteria chosen is the quality. You have the higher quality here and the lower one here. And then considering those, you put the competitors at their right place. And you also don't forget to put your client in this analysis, and this will give the client an overview of where the competition is positioned and what is their position compared to those competitors. Another way to conduct this analysis is to do a sort of chart here. You choose some factors, some criteria here. So the best feature, the pricing, the free plan, and then you just give the information for each competitors, and of course, don't forget the clients. So these are two ways to conduct a competition analysis, but they are not the only ones. So if you find others, feel free to, but here we would like to give you some example. If you have any question, actually, don't hesitate to put them in the chat or just raise your hand. So yeah, I can answer to them.
Yeah, or just interrupt us. We don't mind.
Yeah,
Put
yeah,
on
yeah.
your camera, turn on your mic.
No, we would be glad. Okay, and then in the first section, you usually have the new market selection and analysis. And this is something very, very important, because the rest of your reports will most probably depend on this part. Okay, so when a client asks students to find a new market that they could enter, we sometimes have students who offer companies or institutions. It's true that in some cases, the client may ask you to find institution instead of a really settled market. For example, I'm thinking of EFITs. Sometimes it's better to just give partner university instead of just a country. Although a mistake. But usually a market is a country or a region. And I also recommend to avoid choosing a continent, because this is just too vague, and this won't really help the client, and you'll see that it will make it complicated for the rest of your report. So when finding the ideal market for your client, you should ask yourself a few questions. Here I listed a few ones, but these are not the only ones, okay? So first you have to ask yourself, in which markets there could be potential customers for the client I'm working with. So I don't know, we had a few years ago a client called, no, it was not a few years, a few semesters, called Referee. And you're not gonna advise the client to expand in countries where paddle is not a sport played. There are not many paddle centers, so you have to take that into consideration. Where are there the most potential customers? Then you also have to take into consideration the trade regulations. So for example, if a company is from Europe, it might be easier to expand in other European countries than in the US or in China, for example. Then the political stability. Of course, you're not going to recommend your client to expand in a country where there is a war. That would make it quite difficult, believe me. And then the economic factors, okay? So for example, if your client is a luxury brand, you're not gonna recommend him to expand in a country where the GDP is quite low and people's salary is not that high. Okay, so as I said, these are only a few questions I recommend you to ask yourself when choosing the new market, but these are not the only ones, okay? And then we also have students who do a sort of chart as we had for the competition analysis. So they do a chart like this. They put all the potential new market here, and then they put like political stability here, economic factors, etc. And they give a grade, a sort of like, okay, from a scale to from 1 to 7, how good is the economy in the country? And they give a number for each, and then when they do like the total of the points, they see which market has the higher one and they select this one. So that's also a good way to proceed. And then once you have chosen your new market, you have to analyze it, to give information about it to the client. So here are two analysis you could consider for doing so. First one, there is the PESTEL analysis. In most client challenge, they ask you, like they mentioned, to do a PEST, but you can also do a PESTEL. This is an extra. So here it's pretty self-explanatory. You have to analyze the political factors in the new market, the technological, legal, etc. And then you have the Porter task force analysis. So basically here you have to consider those four, how you call it? I don't have the words. Those four, I have the word on the tip of my tongue though, but
What are you trying to say?
like those four things, you know?
The forces?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you have to consider the four forces, and then you give the explanation about all of them. Rafael, do you want to say something?
Yeah, it's 5 forces.
Oh.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, the Porter 5 forces. Sorry. Yes, and then but yeah, you can say this is we see more. Sorry, more PESTEL than Porter 5 forces, but you can do both as well. That would be like extra, and you would have the examinator would give you a good grade for this if they are well conducted, of course. Okay, so yeah, you have the Porter 5 forces and the PESTEL that you could consider. Then for section 2, for operation management, what the client may ask you varies a lot from a report from another. However, there is something which mainly stay in common in most report is the market entry mode. So the market entry mode is the way the client will enter a new market. And here, the new market is, of course, the one you have selected in the section 1. And that's something students sometimes forget, so pay attention to this. So yeah, here you have to consider the client and the selected new market. So when sorry, so for example, if you have a university, okay, you have AFS, and you would like them to, well, they ask you how could we enter the new market you have selected. Well, you're not gonna choose an export. You're not gonna recommend them to export their services in a way. It's gonna be quite hard. So you would rather consider a partnership, well, here they call it a contracting, but this is the same thing, because this will be easier for AFIT to partner with another university. They can't really export something in a way. So consider this. And then once you have chosen your market entry mode, explain also how the client could adopt it. So what I mean by this is, for example, let's take again the partnership. If you say, okay, we recommend you to enter this new market through partnerships, then give examples of partner, give maybe the phone number, the email, references in order for the client to be able to contact them if they are interested in doing partnership with them. So this is for the market entry mode. We often have, well, I've read that a lot in a lot of reports, is that students just they list all the market entry modes, and then they explain them. Okay, they explain, okay, what is a partnership, and they explain what a partnership is, and they say, okay, maybe it could be good, but we're not sure this. Don't really choose one. They just like go through all the market entry mode and give their opinion for the client. So please avoid to do this. This is not what we expect. What we expect from you is to choose one market entry mode. Maybe in some cases 2 could be good as well, even though it's more work for you, but you can consider this.
Yeah. That's for some companies might have like different services and products, and you might consider a different entry mode if they have a product and a service.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, that's it for the market entry modes. And again, I don't know if there are a few questions.
No, just one of the slides.
Oh,
I'm recording this meeting, and we will also upload the recording to the X-Culture Education YouTube channel, so there you
yes.
can watch back the entire presentation.
And if you have questions, and I mean, I wouldn't mind giving you the slide if it's okay. You can ask your coach, and we can try a way in PDF or something. Okay, now section 3 is usually about marketing. I don't know if I mentioned this, but this is usually the basic structures for a client challenge, but it's not the same for every client. So please don't consider that this is the only thing the client is asking. So go through the client challenge and look if it's the same or if there are things that differ. And for the section 2 here that I just present, management operation, I only choose the market entry mode because there are so many other things that the client could ask you. It could ask you the pricing, the certificates. I believe there is also the trade regulations. So there are many things the client asks you, but usually market entry mode is the one they ask first. Okay, for the marketing, you will most probably, well, you are asked actually to provide some promotion channels. Something that the students often forget is that the client is looking for inexpensive channels. So we have sometimes student who mentioned in the report, okay, for the marketing, the client should dedicate 10 to 15,000, but not what the talking here. And then usually when we talk about promotion channels, in 85% of the report, let's say 85, it will be TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And while those are very good tools if you know how to use them, I agree with that. There are also other promotion channels you should consider, and the more they will be original, the more they will be like the examiner will be, oh, this is a good idea. The more you will get good grades. Because usually what students do is that they only say, okay, TikTok, Instagram, etc. are pretty popular here, so we believe that you should create an account and promote your product through this. The problem is that you can suggest those, but if you do, try to give a good strategy for the client. Try to here suggest a step-to-step strategies that you could, for example, take some current trends or things like that and explain how the client could adapt it to promote its products. And for the schedules, I also remember once reading a report where the team put a real schedule. They were like, okay, Monday the clients will post a reel, for example, on Instagram. This will be this kind of reel, etc. And this was really well done. So that's something you could also consider. And yeah, one thing is that you don't have to forget that what is your the new market you have selected. So even in the marketing section, you should still consider it. So try to see to research what are the promotion channels in the selected new market as well. Because if, for example, you suggest the client to promote its product through Instagram, but on the country where on the selected new market, Instagram is very unpopular, this won't work.
Yes. I also want to highlight if you're okay with that, Eva, just a common mistake in the promotion channels I personally have seen a lot is that we have different companies, and some of our companies are B2C, so business to consumers, but we also have business to business.
I forgot to say that.
And the problem with that is that they both need a different way of promoting. If you want to sell something to a business, a TikTok campaign with trends is probably not gonna do the trick. But maybe sending representatives to trade conventions or trade magazines or email lists can be more suitable. So it's really important to see who is your company trying to sell to, because those popular social media methods are great if you're selling something to consumers, but for businesses you need a different approach, which also depends on the type of business you're selling to. So really keep that in mind.
Yes, I would recommend to actually have a little paragraph about who are the decision makers, and you explain it very clearly. So once you know what the person you need to target, then it will be easier to select promotion channel. Okay, and now for the promotion materials. Okay, I'm gonna give another statistic, but this is a statistic by me. In 90% of the reports, what I see is that students just write promotion materials, and they just like put the promotion materials, and then they go to the next part. But well, it's good that they provide them and they didn't forget this part of the report, but we need explanation. We just don't want, well, the client just don't want an image and then no further explanation. So I would like to give you a few tips for your promotion materials. The first one is to actually translate your content into the language of the selected new markets. This is something I don't see in that many reports, but this is something that will make you earn some additional points. So yeah, again, once you have selected the new market, you have to keep it in mind throughout the whole process of the report. Here, as I said, explain why you did I don't know, why you used those colors. Why did you do I don't know, the structure here or there. And here, for example, we have well, it is a promotion material from a past report, which I found very interesting. So when explaining your choice, you can say, okay, we added a small evaluation here from a client. We added where the product is available. So those are little things which may seem maybe evident in some way, but if you give like again, not a step to step, but a clear explanation, the client, when producing new promotion materials, will know clearly what he has to do. While we don't expect you to do very professional promotion materials, we still want a minimum of professionalism in those. We would like to see that you put some efforts in them. And in order to do your promotion materials, you could consider using Canva or Relate That. Those are two free website, I guess, where you can create nice promotion materials. This presentation was actually made on Canva, and I believe I guarantee you that this is not that hard to create. You really have templates and then you change them. Well, here for the promotion materials, you may have to do more than changing a template, but I think you get the point. And then you also, when creating your promotion materials, you don't have to forget the client's features. So it's logo, the color palette. So if you see that the client mainly use blue and white in his content, try to stay coherent. Yeah, try to stay coherent and go with those, unless you think that those colors don't fit the client very well and you would like to suggest a new color palette. That is also an option. But then if you do this, explain it to the client and explain why the colors need to be changed. And then lastly, as I said, be coherent with the rest of your report. And what I mean by that is, as Louisa said, if you are going to promote your product to another business, you're not gonna make an Instagram post or something else, because this is not how you should try to approach the decision makers. So in that case, you could consider a brochure, for example. So try to adapt your promotion materials depending on the decision makers and the promotion channels as well. Okay, so I think that was the last, that was the last part for the report related things. So if there are any questions, again, don't hesitate. And otherwise, Louisa, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Eva. Yeah, if you have any questions about the report, you can do it now, because now we're gonna moving into like teamwork, because we just got some of the principles for a report. But to get a good report, teamwork is also very important. So that's also what we're gonna discuss now. Okay, so I was thinking to myself, what is important for a team to have, especially a global virtual agriculture team? Now, I see one.
I'm sorry, I don't really get the question. In the part that place sale on products.
Did it mean that you can, for example, think of a discount or an action you can add? Is that your question?
Oh yeah, you can definitely. Yes, you can. It doesn't guarantee that the clients will adopt this the discount, but you can do like those kind of thing on your promotion materials, definitely.
Yes, and you can also then explain the choice for this. Yeah, you can recommend that. Okay. If there are any further questions, feel free to put it in the chat or just turn on the mic. And also at the end, if you still have a question about the report, we will still answer that as well. So let's get back to teamwork. There is no way to guarantee that you will have a successful and effective team, but there are some general principles that successful teams often use that you can implement. So I have thought of some general principles for success I've saw in good performing teams. And also Eva and Rafael, if you've any other principles you want to share, go ahead. So what is important for a successful team is that communication is frequently. Because it's, especially in global virtual teams, very important to communicate. And I will dive into communication specifically later on, because I have some pro tips on how to communicate then. And then secondly, we recommend virtual meetings, and you see with successful teams, they have virtual meetings at least weekly, maybe even 2 times a week, or 2 times a week in the important deadline weeks, right? Because if you have communication, verbal communication can only do so much. Like talking to somebody, seeing their reactions can really help. And virtual meetings are also a great way to bond and to get to know each other. And if you get to know your team, people feel more responsibility. Since that's how our brain works. Our brain has a really difficult time comprehending teams if we only have the names, we don't have the face. So it kind of feels weird about responsibility. If you actually know people, our brains put an increased amount of responsibility because you're working with people. You're not just working with names behind the screen. And especially in global virtual times, it's important to have that time to connect. Secondly, thirdly already, is it's important to set clear expectations for teamwork. So if you don't discuss what kind of quality or what you want in the end as a report, what your goals are as a team, people might not deliver. Especially since different cultures might have different preferences. I'm from a country, we like to compromise a lot. So we like to talk among each other and reach some compromise, and we don't have a very authoritative leadership structure. So everybody is able to give their advice, and people also want advice from people who are not the leader. But in certain countries, there is also value placed on just doing your work like it's said and following instructions, which is not wrong or right. But within your team, you need to discuss how you want to go about things, how to make decisions. And for example, make a team charter. If you do that in the beginning, and even if we are now not in the beginning anymore, but if you're now like noticing some things that are a little bit unclear, set those clear expectations now. Keep discussing them, and maybe they also change. Another thing is with global virtual teams, you sometimes can have some free riders, or people might have situations in their life preventing them from handing in work on time. So one thing you can do is use interim deadlines. So set a deadline that's earlier than our actual deadline. That way, if somebody is late or there are issues and can't complete it, you still have some time to fix. So that will make sure you have less stress last minute if you're still waiting on deliveries. Also, another thing is we have peer evaluations. Use them honestly, right? Because I do sometimes see in teams that people don't want to give bad evaluations if team members are underperforming. And in that way, they do then. I see, when will this video get uploaded on YouTube? The answer to that is once I'm done editing. And I try to do that in the weekend, so before Monday. But I do have to do it manually, so it is dependent, on as soon as I get it done. So what I was telling about peer evaluation.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, Rafael?
But we can share the slides, right? I can share the
Yes.
slides out here if
Yeah.
you guys need it.
Yeah. We also discussed that, but this question was specifically about the recording, so. So to fill in peer evaluations honestly, because I was talking about if you are not happy and you're complaining, we cannot remove team members if you say they're underperforming. We have a structure with the peer evaluations that if they get 2 weeks below 2, they're removed. And peer evaluations are also a way to show the team members how they're performing. Like if you don't give honest scores, people don't know the areas they need to improve in or are doing good. So really focus on those peer evaluations. Take a moment to think about them, fill them in honestly. Think about, oh, what has this team member done? And also, if a team member later asks about it, explain in like a kind and understanding way, maybe what are some of the ways they can improve if you have a conversation about that. And also, keep in touch with your coaches. We have coaches to help you, but they can only help you when you communicate with them frequently, when you let them know if you have issues, when you ask for feedback, when you share the report with them to give feedback on. So that's really important because your coaches are such a great resource. So please make use of them, collaborate with them, and ask for their input. Because you have somebody along the way who can give your feedback along the way. And that's so valuable because often in school projects, I don't have somebody I can necessarily ask for feedback outside of the group who has experience. So it's really valuable. So keep in touch with your coaches because that will also help with your team. And also what's important in global virtual teams is have an open-minded and understanding attitude. People all have their different stories and experiences, and people can look at a problem from different ways. And also, if people might not be handing in on time, it can also be things happening in their personal lives or the quality. Keep in mind, not everybody has the same level of English, and not everybody is also in their education journey at the same page. So be understanding and have an open-minded attitude. Go have those conversations if you have the issues. But if you start with that attitude instead of accusatory, you're gonna have a much easier time with having these conversations if people feel heard and understood. And that way you can also address concerns. What is also important is that if you're working in a team, it's different than alone, and you need to make use of the power of a team. So you need to share ideas with each other, even on sections you're not working on, right? Make use of the power of a team, because sometimes I see reports and you can clearly see that each person has worked on a different section, right? And then you see a lot of inconsistency in the report, and it is basically if you're reading different pieces, which they might all be great or some might different quality, but because it's not one cohesive end products, yeah, that can also impact the quality of your reports in the end. So make use of the power of a team. Go together through the sections. Don't just assign 1 or 2 people to do a section and then expect them to do it completely without giving feedback, without talking about it. And maybe for bigger decisions like market entry, you might want to have a brainstorm session with the entire team before letting people work on it. Because you can also discuss it and then let people work on it and put it in a section and not the other way around. So these are some of the general principles in a team you can use for success. And you might have already noticed that there is a trend towards communication. So now let's dive a little bit deeper into that. Can you go to the next slide? Yes. So with communication, one thing is very important, that cross-cultural virtual teams have an even greater need for communication. Because, for example, Eva and me are working on something together, but we're not in the same country. If I have a school project, what we often do is we are going to sit in the same room, we're going to work together. Eva might be doing something, and I would walk over to her, look at her screen, say this and this. We might talk, we might grab a coffee together and work. So you clearly see people working, and there are also a lot of opportunities to change if you don't agree. But with virtual teams, people are working. I'm working in my own bathroom on the report, and Eva might be doing her own section in her own bathroom in Belgium. So I cannot see what Eva is doing. Eva cannot see what I'm doing. I cannot see if Eva is working at all. I might think Eva is not doing something, so I might also not do something. So it's really important to communicate. I'm doing this, I have a question about this. Because if you don't, there are no other ways to get this information. So I often see the problem of under-communication, so not of over-communication. So keep in mind with global virtual teams, you might have to increase the communication to a higher level than you're normally used to in group projects. And also with communication, addressing conflicts early on will often prevent them from escalating. Because the thing is, sometimes you have some issues that might be small in the beginning. They might be a minor annoyance in the first week. But then, if you don't address it in the second week, you might be even more irritated. And then if you address it like in week 3, you can be a lot more irritated and tensions can create, and it might be a much bigger issue than if you noticed it in the first week, you just had an open and understanding conversation about it. And sometimes people want to let issues slide, say in the beginning, and I also sometimes have that tendency because it's not always nice to confront people about things. However, it's mostly some of the times, if you do let it slide and not discuss it in the beginning stages, it will come back later. And then you wish you have addressed it in the beginning, and often then it's a lot of a smaller issue. Also, what I want to address is that with global virtual teams, you will have meetings, but most of your communication will be written or typed. So through WhatsApp, through Slack, through email, through Instagram group chats. And written communication, there has been a lot of research about, has a bigger chance of misunderstandings. Because we rely in our day-to-day communication a lot of verbal communication. So with verbal communication, I mean expressions, tone of voice. In written communications, you don't always have that. And keep in mind, a lot of us are also communicating in a language that's not our first language, which leads to even more misunderstanding. So keeping that in mind when you write a message, maybe read it over an extra time. But also if somebody, for example, writes a message that you think comes off a bit rude, check with clarifying and asking questions to increase the understanding with each other is crucial. Because it's important to like clarify it in the beginning so that a misunderstanding doesn't become a conflict. And in global virtual teams, that's even more important. And also about communication, it's important to have task-related communication. However, what we also see in successful team is that they also talk about things outside of the project. That they talk about how it's going at school, what kind of hobbies they have. Again, because it's easier to work with people you know a little bit. So also have designated time to communicate about that. Maybe have discussions in the group chat or at the end of each meeting, like have 5 or 10 minutes just to catch up once you've done all the business related stuff. So I now talked about communication in general, but now I thought, what should you communicate about? What is important to communicate with your team? So I made a more specific list because I know all these principles of teamwork and effective teams, they can sometimes be a bit abstract because teamwork is a little bit more abstract than a report, which often has like clear guidelines, but teamwork is also something you learn along the way. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, what should you communicate with your team? So share your ideas. You should also share your availability. So if you, for example, have a exam
Upcoming
coming.
event.
What?
An upcoming event.
Yeah, or an exam, or you have some family issues, say it. And also, if you said you would submit something by, let's say, Friday, and you have issues with completing your work, you might have to hand it in later, communicate that so that your team knows. What you could also communicate is ask for help with something if you don't understand something in the report or just want inputs. It's also a good practice to give updates on your work, right? So if you have done something, let them know. That way you have also open conversations, and you can also say, oh, today I worked on that. Maybe somebody wants to read over and give some feedback. And you can also give constructive feedback as well. Your coaches can do it, but it's also good to yourself also look at the report and give thanks. Also, compliments. If your team members do something nice, it's also good to share that. Reminders. You can always take the lead to send a reminder for a deadline. Communicate about issues. We had that. And also you can ask for feedback if you need that on something. And also have some separate time to communicate about fun stuff. Okay, so this was my last slide. I also see we're almost out of our time. I also see we lost
But
some
oh,
people.
oh yeah. Okay, should I stop sharing?
Yes.
Okay. Belen, do you have any questions, inputs, feedback, whatever to share with us? If no, that's okay.
Now everything is clear.
Okay, then. I mean, we have 3 minutes left, so if you have a last note to share. I
Well,
don't.
thank you so much for coming today. Good luck with your reports and your
Yeah.
teamwork. And I also want to remind you guys, you have coaches. If you have issues, reach out to them and we also hope you have some time to have fun.